I was a single mom living out of the area. There were many trials and tribulations in my life and past relationships. I wanted to provide a good, loving home for my girls, and I seemed that I had failed to provide that for them. A while later, I had met a wonderful gentleman. He was sweet, full of compliments, hardworking, and he made my heart beat fast. After a few years into our relationship, I felt that it was time to pursue a future with this person that would finally be our happily ever after. Up until this point, his profession had taken him away from home for extended periods of time, and his involvement with my girls was minimal. The girls were often visiting their father when we spent time together. Because this guy was from Elgin County, we decided to move in this direction. I uprooted my family and sold my little mom and girls home with some proceeds left for a down payment on our new forever family home, white picket fence included. In our search for a new home, I found a house in Elmer, Ontario. Never heard of Elmer before. It was for sale by owner, and the house and town seemed like the perfect place to raise my family. It reminded me of my parents' home. One of my friends told me about a local mortgage broker who could likely help me. We made an appointment and arrived with the required paperwork. He said, I should be able to make this work. I'm sure that he fudged some numbers and tweaked a few things, but at that time, I didn't care. And I didn't understand the process. I agreed quickly and signed the mortgage commitment and used the entire proceeds from the sale of my little house as a down payment. I got rid of all my furniture and decorative items. As he claimed, his were a lot nicer and higher quality, and mine was single mom crap. Very quickly, I learned that my knight in shining armor had no intention of being a father to my children. He was verbally and emotionally abusive to them and dismissive. This was certainly no family. He didn't want to compete with my love and affection that I had for the girls, and he was very unrealistic of how children should act and behave. We got into an argument, one of many, and he basically told me it was them or him. I just stood and stared at him. Went upstairs and he packed all of his things, leaving a ceramic piggy bank that my youngest had given him for trip saving, smashed on the bed and empty. I felt empty too. My bubble had been burst. I heard nothing from him for about 2 weeks. Then one day he showed up at the door, demanding to come in and fix things up. I had realized over that time how toxic the relationship had truly been, and I told him to go away, get out of our lives, and leave us alone. About a week later, he showed up with a U-Haul, his nephew, his new girlfriend, and removed all the furniture, the decor, the pots and pans, and even the microwave from the house. After about 6 months, I began to struggle to keep up financially. Was pulling money off of my credit card to make mortgage payments. I called the mortgage company to see if there was anything that they could do to help me, and they agreed to interest-only payments for a few months, but suggested that if my financial position didn't change, that I may have no other option but to sell the house. This is when the reality really hit me. I had paid $80,000 over market price on the house, and the mortgage cancellation policy was $15,000. I also learned that my mortgage was at a 14% interest rate. This was supposed to be our new start. This was me creating a good life for my family, and I felt really worthless. Soon I had no other choice but to try to sell the house. Because of the financial burden, I could not afford to use a real estate agent, as I would be unable to pay their commission. I set to work getting the house ready for sale, and I went to the hardware store to buy a for sale sign. I advertised on social media and Marketplace. I printed up some flyers and I posted them in local shops. I knocked on doors and my neighbors' doors to let them know I was selling. And I asked if they had any friends or family that might like to live in our neighborhood. The flyer said, "Choose your new neighbor." I held open houses and had some people through and was further humiliated with their unneeded comments about the price and the outdated elements of the house. I had many local real estate agents knocking on my door, cautioning me with the pitfalls of selling privately and how I need a real estate agent to assist me. I invited each of the agents in that had contacted me and I had good, honest conversations with them about the entire situation and how I would love nothing more than to use a realtor to just look after everything for me. However, it wasn't possible to use their services, as after all their hard work, there would be no paycheck in the end. They all agreed that I was in a hopeless situation, and I started to give up hope and thought that we would soon be homeless. My girls' mental health was really suffering as well, and they were full of fear and anxiety. I spent many days driving around in my car thinking about easier ways to fix my problem, looking for an easy way out, thinking about how I could end things, making a plan. I was scared for my life and the future of my girls. I would scream and cry out to God while I was driving around, "Help me, help me, help me." But I heard no answer, and I would just go home again and try to manage through another day. One day an agent showed up at the door, a fine-dressed gentleman with a well-put-together portfolio. I reluctantly invited him in, and I sent the girls downstairs to play. He proceeded to tell me about his services, giving me his real estate spiel. About an hour later, one of my girls poked her head up the stairs and said, "Oh, Mom, I'm sorry. I was just coming to see what's for dinner." Quietly asked her to return to play in the basement, and then I just couldn't hold it together anymore. Excused myself, and I went to the bathroom to sob. What seemed like forever, I finally got myself together, and I returned to the kitchen where the realtor was sitting at the table. His binder was all closed up, and he was standing to leave. He asked if I could join him, if I could see him to the door, and then he asked me to step outside with him, and I did. Then he said to me, "If you tell anyone I did this, I will deny it." He put his arm around one of my shoulders, and he said, "I want you to take this $20 and get your kids a pizza for dinner tonight." No, I said, "You don't need to do this." And I cried harder. But we didn't have any food. Then he said, "Look around. I want you to look around. Look at the houses. Look at your street and the cars. Look at the trees and the sky. Look all around you. I want you to know that God has a plan for your life. God loves you, and he will not abandon you. He will provide for you and make sure that you are looked after." And then he got in his car and he drove away. I went inside and I fell to my knees and I thanked God and I begged him for forgiveness for the foolish mistakes that I had made, and I had a new sense of hope. About a week later, one of the first real estate agents that had visited me showed up at my door, returning just to see how I was making out with my sale. I told him no luck, but I was trying, and here's a few more things I've added to my sales tactics. No avail. At that time, he said to me, "You really should get into real estate. You'd be amazing, and I think people will really like you." Oh, no, thank you. My life's falling apart right now, and the last thing I need to be doing with 2 kids and 2 jobs, verging on homelessness, with no lunches for my kids, is to go back to school, which I hated, by the way. I was not a good student growing up at the best of times, and I had problems with focusing and comprehension. No, thank you. I'm not interested. I will do anything but go back to school. And besides that, I want a job that I can help people. Somewhere I can give some value. A career that I can help to make people feel understood. A job where I can show compassion. Nobody likes real estate agents. They're pushy, and they're only out for the money, and they're greedy. It's not my thing, thanks. Over the next few months, he continued to persist about me getting my real estate license, and we ended up becoming friends. In the meantime, I had called the mortgage company and handed over the keys. As I could not continue making the payments, I found a townhouse for the girls and I to rent, and we began to start over. One morning, I was online fiddling around, and I decided to check out real estate courses. Wow, there was a lot involved. Mortgages, property law, commercial real estate, and then I saw the course prices. Not only was I overwhelmed with the entire process, there was no way I could even afford to start the first segment with four, with many more continuing education courses to follow. My real estate friend would not take no for an answer and insisted that he was paying for my first course to get me started alone until I got on my feet. I reluctantly agreed, and I ordered my first course books. They came in the mail, and it was like reading Chinese. I read and I studied for hours, and I went to write my first exam at Western Ontario, and 3 days later, I received my failed test results. I was crushed. The Real Estate Council allows you a second try at the exam, so this time I studied extra hours, extra hard, asked extra questions, and I failed again on my second attempt. I was once again completely devastated and feeling completely useless for letting someone else down as well, that really believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I took about 2 weeks to mope around. Then I woke up one morning remembering something I had forgotten. Maybe I don't believe in myself, but I know God does. I started to get a bit of extra money saved, so I re-enrolled in the courses, and I gave myself lots of time, and I passed. As I started the difficult journey to complete each course, things started to become more clear to me. Maybe this is my thing. I proudly completed all of my requirements, and off I went to interview brokerages to decide which one would be the best fit for me. The agent often chooses the brokerage that they would like to work for, and the brokerages are happy to have more agents as they get a cut of the agent's commission. I didn't know that being in this fantastic small town, that there was always talk of support local, and I wanted to be part of that. I wasn't interested in a large corporate brokerage. I wanted small town shop local vibes. One of the brokerages I interviewed with offered to pay my initial registration fees if I came to work with them, $1,200. Paid registration fees? I thought I was done with the money bleed. I don't have any money for registration fees. I wondered if anyone else would make me this offer. I'd done a lot of walking around the streets of Elmer, and for weeks I'd walked past this building on a corner. It had no windows and the most horrendous teal green siding. I often thought to myself, 1, yuck, that is terrible, who would do that? And 2, I wonder what's going in that building. The next week a sign went up on that building, Driver Realty Inc. Brokerage. I called and spoke to the owner and made an appointment to go in for a chat. They were seasoned realtors and they worked for a few brokerages before, and they had recently decided to open their own. I chatted with the husband and wife team, and I instantly felt welcomed like part of their family, and they agreed to take me on. I asked if they could cover my initial registration fees, and they quickly told me, no, sorry, we don't have that kind of money right now. We just opened the brokerage, and a lot of money went into this. I left and I returned home. Somewhat downtrodden, an hour later, my phone rang. It was the owner telling me that her and her husband had chatted and they will do whatever they have to find the money to cover things for me. They acknowledged that I had no experience, but they said I had life experience, drive, and personality, and they were looking forward to working with me. My first real estate call was to a family that could not afford to pay their mortgage. They were going to lose their home. I'll never forget how lost and devastated they were. And to this day, I can still see the wife crying at the kitchen table. I was able to give them some ideas on what had worked for me and help them get through a few months until they worked things out. They were happily surprised that I didn't try to push a sale on them. And when I left their house, I cried all the way home. Maybe real estate agents aren't used car salesmen. Maybe I can use this career to help people. Maybe this is my thing. A couple of years later, a little brick bungalow came up for sale, and I was able to purchase it for the girls and I. It was solid yet dated, and it's still a work in process. Early one very cold winter Saturday morning, I was dust mopping the floors. I was in standard cleaning gear, stretchy pants, an old ripped t-shirt, and bare feet. I opened the back door to step out to shake my mop, and the door locked behind me. There I was, standing in a dusting of snow in my bare feet, freezing to death, and I was wondering what the heck I was going to do. I ran around the house to see if the front door was open because, hey, it's Elmer, and who locks their door? I checked all the windows, and everything was locked, and I was so cold. I ended up breaking in through a basement window and spending the next half hour feeling sorry for myself and thinking, boy, man, that was cold. I almost died out there. Can you imagine being stuck outside with no proper winter gear? And then inside I heard a voice, but it was more of a feeling that said, you want to know who's really cold? People that live on the street. That's who. Get going. I didn't hesitate, and without changing out of my cleaning clothes, I quickly threw on my coat, hat and boots, and I got in my car. And the next thing you know, I'm on the road to St. Thomas. I think I've seen a few people in St. Thomas that might need some help. I scooted into the Tim Hortons drive-thru and I grabbed 6 medium hot chocolates and a box of 6 muffins, and I drove down the main street of St. Thomas at approximately 7 a.m. that Saturday morning. And there was not a soul, not anybody. Where are all the people that I'm supposed to help? I soon found myself lost down a series of one-way streets, trying to figure out how to get back to Talbot Street, the main road, to head home with the now cold hot chocolate. As I was crisscrossing my way around, I saw a man down one of the side streets. He was pushing a walker down the middle of a slush-filled street, and he was struggling greatly. I felt maybe if I went down one more side road, I would be a bit closer to him, and I didn't want to startle him. I drove one street over, and I got a bit closer, and I could see that he had on a very thin coat and uninsulated work boots that were too big, and when he lifted his feet, they came out of his boots, and I could see that he had no socks on. I quickly turned down the other side street, and I lost him. He wasn't walking fast. He must be close by. I had another one way and another, and I ended up way further down the street. But thankfully, I did end up back on Talbot Street, way up the other side of the road. I spotted him crossing the road. I was about 3 traffic lights away, but at least I had my eye on him. And then I hit every red light, and I lost him again. I kept traveling up the road to see if I could find the street that I thought he crossed at. I turned the corner, and he was gone. Parked at the side of the road, and I sat there in frustration. I just wanted to help. I looked out the passenger side of my car, and I saw a pole with scarves tied to it. Who would tie scarves to a pole? Then I noticed I was in front of some sort of building. Leaned as far as I could out the window of my car, and I read the sign on top, and it said, The Grace Cafe. I wonder what this is. Got out of my car, and I saw printed on the front window, James 2:16, be warm and fed. I entered into this tiny little, yet well-decorated, comfy soup kitchen and was amazed at the service that was taking place for the people in need in the area. I introduced myself and asked if I could help. Soon I was serving coffee on a weekly basis and have since become a supporter and board member at the Grace Cafe. I never did see that man with the walker again. As time went on, I started to really root myself in the little town of Elmer. I loved the community, I loved the people, I loved my job. I have the opportunity to meet so many people, and many of these clients have also become my friends. I was chatting with a friend one day about serving at the Grace Cafe and mentioned that perhaps our town needs a place where people can go and feel safe, and wondered, do we have a homeless community? Are there people in our community that could use a hand up? She told me that she was part of a group of people in town that were actually working on getting a shelter together. She was concerned as she had found someone sleeping in her storage shed at work, using pink insulation for a blanket. This group had been discussing the potential need for a winter emergency shelter. She asked me if I was interested in helping and be involved in some sort of the startup. After much thought, planning, and many meetings, the Elmer Emergency Shelter was born in the basement of St. Paul's Church. We had a set-up agreement with the Family Central Apartments down the street that the navigator, Sean, will assist with any social, emotional, or counseling needs for the guests. We did the best we could over the next few winters, but we were lacking full bathroom facilities and a kitchen. We served a lot of instant noodles and granola bars. I had the opportunity to spend the evening volunteering with so many fantastic people, sharing their life stories and faith, and meeting the Family Central staff and hearing about the amazing things that they were doing inside those walls. It was soon proposed that the emergency shelter be moved over to the Family Central building, where there was more space, showers, and a full kitchen, and to make snacks. Very shortly after, the Community Food Security Program was started, along with all of the other resources the Family Central has to offer. I became a volunteer there, and I met my tribe, so to speak, and recently have become a board member. I soon learned that many of the lovely people that I had met attended Mount Salem Church. What a testimony they are to the way God intends us to serve others. Life is certainly not perfect, and I don't always do the things I'm supposed to do. But who knew that each trial that life handed me was part of this journey to lead me where I am today, and all the friends that I've met along the way. I often ask myself, if things had been easy, would I have called out to God? Would I have listened in return for his voice?